Today's Total Soccer Show is sponsored by Enclosed. If you're looking for a gift for your significant other, and if you've always wanted that gift to be lingerie, but you were too scared to go into a store, Enclosed is here to help. Enclosed is a female-owned business. Hello, Antonia, if you're listening. Specializing in high-end lingerie. We mean high-end, both in the quality of the product and in the customer service you'll receive. Because Enclosed comes with a size guarantee, which means you can't get it wrong and get the wrong size. Enclosed does all the work, and then you get the credit for the upscale gifts that will be delivered every month. And of course, we have an offer for you. If you go to enclosed.gifts, that's ENCLOSED.GIFTS, and enter the code Total Soccer, all one word, Total Soccer, you'll get $35 off any multi-month gift. Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who would not have scored for the US against Cuba tonight because his name doesn't begin with J. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Wow, that's a new one. Well done. Was it on the fly?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So Josh and Jordan, there we are.
Fact check me.
Mm-hmm.
It's correct.
It
2
is
goals
correct.
each for Sargent and Morris, and the US wins 4-0 away, in heavy quotation marks, to Cuba. It was in the Cayman Islands.
In the hostile atmosphere after rebounding from an emotionally traumatizing game against Canada or whatever
Fox
it was.
Sports 1 were trying their best to sell it. It was majority US fans, actually, right?
Was it?
In the Cayman Islands. Yeah, I mean, there weren't many of them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but it was in front of a small crowd.
And there's 3 people and 2 of them are pro-USA. 66% of the crowd.
Wasn't a nice field. Really bumpy, nasty-looking field. I'm going to say a pretty professional, get-the-job-done US performance. I think we went in well prepared for this, right? Expecting, not a pretty game, not great camera angles.
Yeah.
Just get in there, get the job done, get out.
And it was a conversation that you and I had at a couple different points because I was sort of feeling frustrated with the idea of US is up 3-0, but they're completely sitting off, slowing it down, kind of content to see the game out. And my feeling was if you've got, and Stu Holden himself said it, if you're playing an inferior opponent, why not go at them and you want to score goals, you want to be in there, you want to prove that you belong and prove you can score. But your point, which I think is fairly fair as well, is that these guys are in the middle of their club seasons.
Some of them.
Some of them. They're playing a relatively meaningless game, given that it's Cuba. They're up 3-0. Why go out there and risk getting into more physical challenges? Cuba were content to be physical,
especially on a bad field.
Yeah.
Don't get hurt. Don't be injured for the next month because you went wild against Cuba when the game was already won, right? Once the game was 3-0, it was already won. There was no need to exert or hurt yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the player that got kicked around the most was probably Josh Sargent, and I would say he was the one who was most active in dropping in and running around and trying to make things happen. He seemed to be the one who was on the receiving end of a lot of physical challenges, and so maybe, just maybe, some of the players saw that and was like, nah, maybe one touch is fine. Or maybe slow touches around the back are fine as well.
So to review this this game, USA v Cuba, it's secure, worth saying it secures our passage to the CONCACAF Nations League Finals, which is a 4-team tournament, will take place in June. It's happened. So to review this game, we are going to dissect this game minute by minute, right? We're going to take each 60-second segment of the game and break it down.
I thought we were going to do that as one of those podcasts where 1 minute of the game is one episode of the podcast. And we're going to do it over the next 90 days.
A 93-episode series.
I would genuinely quit this show.
No, instead, we asked for questions from Twitter about this game, but also about what happens next for the US national team, right? Going into 2020, because people want to know about that.
Yep.
So we asked for questions on Twitter. We've gone through and picked out 21 questions.
Oh boy.
Which we are going to go through rapid fire, some about the game, but a lot about the future for the US team.
Right. Because I think everything that we've seen so far has been in the match recaps, in Grant Wallace 3 things, a lot of it was sort of, what did we learn? There wasn't much to learn.
That's a lot of people's feeling. There's some stuff to talk about.
There's some stuff, yeah.
This was a way of us knowing what people wanted to hear about.
Right.
Okay, so you ready to get going?
Let's do it.
All right, first question is from Andrew Scher. How mad should Aaron Long be at Jordan Morris?
I mean, not really, is the answer. For Morris's second goal, the U.S. is third. It's basically a cross from Aaron Long, takes a bit of a deflection, kind of like loops and drops in, sort of similar to the Landon Donovan goal in the 2002 World Cup, where it takes a weird deflection and somehow it ends up in the back of the net. In this case, it ends up somehow in the back of the net because Jordan Morris is there to tap it in.
Yeah.
Replay shows
it was going
proudly
anyway.
going in. Yeah, but I think I am a kind of believer in that moment of you want to make sure. It's also the case that because it's a deflection and probably across from Aaron Long, you don't know if he would have even been given credit for the goal. So I think between those kind of number of factors, and I think the fact that we saw him on the replay in the celebration say like it's all good or it's okay.
Yeah,
I don't think he was too upset by
Morris
it.
apologized and Lang said it's all good.
And also
okay.
sheepishly smiled at the camera as well, which
After
I enjoyed.
He scored. Yeah, he knew where the goalpost camera was, right?
He did.
Morris. Also, Aaron Long's not short of international goals, right?
That's true.
I mean, didn't he score against Canada just a few days ago? He's fine. He did.
And he helped take down Thanos. So I think with all that in mind, like he's having a good year. He's having a good year.
So next question. I guess we'll go back and forth asking the questions instead of me keep doing it.
Okay. Josario Machoa, did we learn anything new tonight?
No, not in a big way, but just us watching the game, we were watching for patterns. And I think what we did, not learn is maybe the wrong word, but we observed that the US went out there with some bear-haltery patterns of play, which is they'd been told to do specific things in possession. Right. One obvious example was to switch the field. It happened a lot, right, where the US would be on one side, Cuba would shuffle over a little bit, and we would quickly switch it from, say, left to right, out to Yedlin or out to Paul Arriola. And that would be the way that we would get around Cuba, right? Because they were very, very tight and compact. So we switched the field, and that stuff really, really worked. Yeah,
yeah. I would say that's definitely a thing we learned in terms of patterns of play. I think we learned that the U.S. players as a whole have a decent first touch when it comes to CONCACAF fields, because I do think that there were moments in which the ball would just pop up for no reason. There's the one that we both noted with Tim Ream where it pops up and he's able to control it really well. The Jordan Morris's first goal, the one that he takes after Weston McKennie flicks it on, again, under difficult circumstances on a soggy field with probably traction being limited, that he kind of kills that ball dead and then finishes well. Again, good first touches, good sort of technical play from the U.S. in a game that sort of invited non-technical play.
Yep, so they're never going to be like massive big picture things that we learn that like, oh, suddenly this is a revelation, but you can just observe little things in a game like this. Like I also observed just a little pattern where when the centre-backs had the ball on the left side, McKennie would come deep and show for the ball. Right. When the centre-backs had the ball on the right side, Roldan would come deep and show for the ball. Those are like the left side and right side attacking midfielders. So just little things you can observe. Nothing big picture, though.
No, and then I would say, and then one more little thing, or a couple more little things, would just be some of the selections for the starting 11. Like you and I had wondered, is it Zardes or is it Sargent? Is it Zardes because you reward him for what he did against Canada and kind of how good he was in that one? Here we see, nope, like Sargent still has a role, and I would say did it much better, again, against Canada, but still better control for the most part, able to scrap, able to drop in, able to be involved. And I would also say the other question we had is, will we see Jackson Ewell at number 6 again? We saw it again tonight, which to me means...
Oh, there's a question about Jackson Ewell later.
It's him and probably Michael Bradley right now for the number 6 spot. Yeah. We shall see.
He's definitely ahead of Will Trapp, right, based on this starting line.
Seems that way.
Next question is from @DJ Bonus Beats. How is this better than a friendly against a European team or a South American team?
It's probably not, is the answer. I think
that's right.
The U.S., like initially we thought like, oh, they just kind of got a bad draw for CONCACAF Nations League. Really, this was kind of par for the course across all 4 groups, that there was one standout team, one decent team, okay team, and then one pretty bad team. In this case, it's Cuba not getting any points.
Yep.
So I think the only things you could say is that it's a competitive game, which means you can cap tie players. So at least that's a useful thing.
Yeah.
It is going on the road in like weird CONCACAF conditions. It's 80 degrees and very humid in like the Cayman Islands right now. So you got to deal with that, I guess, a little bit. But aside from that, it's probably not better right now. I think what you have to think about with the Nations League, and this gets to a question we're going to get later, is the future.
So Beamer Jenkins then asks, why was Cuba picked for League A?
Yeah.
Why was Cuba in League A? They are clearly the least qualified CONCACAF squad, so why not a team on the cusp of the Hex, if not in the Hex? So Beamer is essentially complaining about the quality of opponent we faced in League A, which should be the top tier of the CONCACAF Nations League.
Yep.
I know the answer to this, why Cuba was picked for League A, instead of, say, a team like Jamaica, who ended up in League B, who would have been a much tougher challenge. Did you get a look at the qualification process?
Yeah, because CONCACAF wants to avoid communism, right? And so they wanted to make sure that they had a communist representative. Is that not it?
That is not it.
Okay, no, it's mostly because, I do think I'm going to let you explain it because you will be able to say it better than I can. But I think my takeaway from this is it's the first time we're doing this. They're trying to figure it out.
Yes, I think that's absolutely it. So the way that the leagues were picked, League A, League B, League C. League A, the first 6 teams in were the teams from the 2018 World Cup qualifying hex, right? So you have those 6 teams already seeded in there. And then every other team in CONCACAF was placed in one massive league table. It had like 30-plus teams in it. And then they all only played 4 games each. And then then they were ranked in the table. And then the top few teams from that were placed in League A, right? And the reason, if you compare Cuba with an obviously superior team like Jamaica, they both played 4 games, won 3, lost 1. Cuba had the superior goal difference because they got to have a game against Turks and Caicos and won 11-0, right? So it's just that they had a superior goal difference because they got luck of the draw in the opposition they faced, whereas Jamaica didn't.
It's like when you're 4 weeks into the Premier League season and like there was the like Hull City or top of the table because they won all 4, but they're playing relegation candidates, and it's like, okay, end the season there, Hull your champions.
That's
kind of what happened.
It was I still think the CONCACAF Nations League is a decent idea. I think it was a very poorly thought through qualification process that did not produce best results. Maybe they should have just gone with FIFA rankings for the initial staging of the CONCACAF Nations League.
Yes, and I'm sure there are reasons why, and I'm sure it relates to making every federation within the confederation feel like they're involved and feel like they have justification for playing and have a chance to make it to the top tier. But still, I'm with you. It makes more sense to go with the rankings up front.
Cuba definitely relegated after this inaugural edition of CONCACAF Nations League.
Yeah, I believe it's my turn. John Neon, did you see anything from Yedlin tonight that says he should be ahead of Reggie Cannon?
No. I mean, it's tough, right? Because it's Cuba. So even if he'd been lights out, you could have said, oh, it's only Cuba. But I still saw a lot of moments from DeAndre Yedlin where we switched the field or there was a long diagonal and he didn't control it.
Right.
It was like the flip side of, he got an assist, right, against Canada when he miscontrolled a long diagonal from Yule from a free kick, but then chased it to the end line and still got the cross in to the far post. There were a couple of those where he just miscontrolled it and it went out of play.
Yeah, and I was trying to pay more attention to it because we had a few people who are either maybe Yedlin fans or Newcastle fans or some combination of the two who said that we've been a little too harsh on his crossing. Yeah. He's been good for Newcastle in his delivery, in his kind of attacking play. I think I agree with you. I saw some of what you saw tonight. Worth noting, he has the quick throw-in that leads to the Areola assist for the first goal.
He does,
That's good awareness. And I do think that if you're going to be on the front foot, if you're going to be much more attacking, he is that option who has the pace to sort of run behind when the ball's on the left side and you get that big diagonal in. He seems like he is a decent enough attacking option from fullback. I don't know if that's enough to put him ahead of Reggie Cannon because I do think we've seen Reggie Cannon do a lot of impressive stuff as well in that right back spot, both defensively and offensively.
Mark Bajarski asks, which player's stock has risen the most from the Nations League? So
Jackson Ewell.
4 games against Canada twice and Cuba twice. Yep. Jackson Ewell. Okay, so he played in, I believe he played in the home game against Cuba. He didn't start, at least, the away game to Canada.
He did not.
He played in the home game against Canada and he played in this. So he's actually done really well to only be involved in the good results.
Yeah, three wins for Jackson Ewell.
So in terms of average points per game, Jackson Ewell's the winner here.
Yeah, I think so. But he's also the big winner because he sort of, all you can do is like win the games that are in front of you and play the best you can in those games. And I would say he did just that. That like he did well in the 2 Cuba games, as well as you can do when you're playing an opponent like Cuba.
I think he did a good job tonight where he was he would progress the ball from the defensive area where there's no pressure on you, and he would get it into that congested zone where there's loads of Cuban players.
Yeah.
He was a nice little link player for there. And he was very good at spreading the field in a Michael Bradley-ish kind of way, right?
We saw the variation in he can like play the ball quickly backwards if he knows it's not on. He can try to turn and go forward with it. He can try to spread it wide immediately. He can hold it up and then play those long diagonals. There's a variation in his passing ability that I really like.
Yeah.
But then we saw moments, especially in the Canada game, where there's also quick accelerations, quick bursts of pace, 10 and 15 yards to close down space, to block off options, or to close down a player if they've found a way to get on the ball. And I think that's something that we don't see as much from Michael Bradley. We tend to see him be more central and like cerebral, I think is the word that gets thrown around a little bit with him, and kind of has that's other like players cover in for him.
That's like the thing that sounds like a compliment, but maybe isn't.
Maybe not. Yeah. Maybe not. So I think Jackson
Ewell...
It's the
opposite of athletic, maybe.
Yes. Yes. I think Jackson Ewell showed he can do a lot of what Michael Bradley does and then can do a few other things that maybe Michael Bradley Bradley doesn't do as well.
Okay,
Again,
so
I don't know if that puts him ahead. Maybe that's a question for later, but I think
is a question for later.
He's a big performer. And then I think Jordan Morris, not necessarily just Nations League, but I think he has had a very good year, and that did not change with the Nations League.
Yeah, so his good form for the US has coincided with good form for Seattle and winning MLS Cup with Seattle. But I think, there's a good shout for Jordan Morris because he's now a go-to US men's national team guy. I don't think you would have said that before the CONCACAF Nations League started.
Certainly
right?
not.
And now I think he's in everybody's starting 11, right?
Yeah.
I think, including especially Greg Berhalter's, which is important. So definitely Jordan Morris. Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got a weird one. I would say Serginho Dest because we didn't have him for the first two games against Cuba and against Canada.
Yeah.
He didn't have the call-up. He was still deciding, makes a decision, comes in, plays well. USA beats Canada. It's all about Serginho Dest. It's not really. But
I would say his stock was never higher than when we were desperate to get him to commit to us, right?
Yeah. So maybe it went up from like 4,000 to like 4,000.1. Like it still went up a little bit, his stock, but like not maybe that much. Yeah.
I got a couple of the nominations.
What you got?
Brad Guzan.
Yeah.
His stock has definitely
that's a really good argument.
over these last couple. Like now, I still think Zach Steffen's the starter, but I think we're in a situation where if he has tendonitis, for example, everyone's very, very comfortable with Brad Guzan, not least because Guzan's passing out of the back looked at least equal to Zach Steffen's.
Yeah, and especially on a field like tonight, which was not great, that he was still able to complete passes and never really put the U.S. in any sort of threat. That's pretty good. Again, part of that is Cuba. But also, there were shots from Canada and from Cuba tonight that like Cuba had one, I think, early on that took a deflection, and Guzan had to adjust. He makes the save. Yeah. None of them like too sprawling, too incredible, too game-saving, but they're routine, and he made all the saves and kept two shutouts. That's pretty much all you can ask.
My final nomination for someone whose stock has risen throughout the Nations League games, Tim Ream.
Yep.
But maybe going as far back as the Gold Cup, but we've definitely gone from a place where I wasn't thrilled about Tim Ream at left back specifically. Now I'm thrilled about Tim Ream at left back.
Wore the captain's armband for these last two games as well. Worth
and he
noting
played
that.
centre-back this game, but like his left-back performance home to Canada I thought was magnificent.
Yep, there we go. So we've got some standout performers. It means the Nations League is worthwhile, turns out.
More on that later. Today's Total Soccer Show is sponsored by Policy Genius. 'Tis the season, Taylor. 'Tis the season to elect benefits through your workplace. Most people know about open enrollment as decision time for healthcare coverages here, but it's also the perfect moment to reassess your life insurance needs.
'Tis the season to elect benefits through your workplace, la la la. I think that's my favorite Christmas carol.
If you have to add la la la, you're filling syllables, right?
I think maybe just maybe. Yeah, to properly provide for your family, or for the families most people need 10 times the life insurance coverage than they get through their jobs, which means your employer life insurance is leaving you underinsured. Daryl,
maybe some of the US players would have taken out some extra insurance when they saw the state of the field in the Cayman Islands.
It's possible. It's possible. I hope not. I hope that, again, we've learned from Cuba and they weren't like, oh no, this is going to be difficult. Instead, they're just like, yeah, bring it on. I don't need no extra life insurance.
Maybe they faked toughness on the outside, but they were secretly on their phones going to policygenius.com comparing various insurance options.
Maybe they just had the calmness and poise and belief of a person who utilized Policy Genius as the easy way to shop for life insurance. They weren't stressed out. They weren't panicked. It is a difficult thing to look for life insurance, but Policy Genius makes it easy. So maybe the players had utilized it, and that's why they were just relaxed against Canada and not all stressed.
So you can find life insurance, a plan that's not tied to your job. And once you apply, the Policy Genius team will handle all the paperwork and the red tape. So if you're looking at your workplace benefits this month, make sure to double check your life insurance options. Then go to policygenius.com. Excuse me, it's policygenius.com to get quotes and apply in minutes.
That's right. They can also help you find the right home and auto insurance, disability insurance too. That's Policy Genius, the easy way to compare and buy life insurance. Thank you very much to Policy Genius for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you very much to #Tank4Two. Is that where we are, I do believe?
It is.
Tank for two. Is Yule the starting number 6 now?
I don't think so. I think once Michael Bradley comes back, he's still, I was going to say numero uno, but it's numero 6.
Yes, I agree. I think it's his. This is not going to be helpful, but I can explain it further. It's his until it's not, which is to say that, like, I think it's closer. That conversation is closer than it's ever been. But I think until Tyler Adams can come in and show that he is consistent enough and fit enough, then I don't think he Michael Bradley has lost it outright, and I don't think Jackson Ewell has done enough yet in 2 games against Cuba, 1 game against Canada to really move ahead of Michael Bradley. I think he's moved closer.
Canada was the other. I don't think a performance against Cuba moves the needle at all, but the performance against Canada, still only Canada, but it's a team we just lost to. I think that moves the needle at least a little.
And I'm not trying to call you out, but like that was a game in which you wanted more physicality. You were a little bit concerned about Jackson Ewell starting against Canada. Some of those fears I would assume were alleviated, but that isn't. We got a little bit more of an answer of like, oh, okay, he can do it. So that does raise our estimations of him a little bit. I still think he's slightly behind Michael Bradley, who is probably at this point slightly behind a fully fit and ready to go Tyler Adams. I'm just not sure if we're ever going to see that.
I'm not sure if in Berhalter's head Bradley is behind Adams.
That's
right?
true.
Because he's talked about I need to see what he brings at the 6 in terms of his passing range and all that.
It's probably wishful thinking.
That's the great mystery of 2020 is do we get a fit Tyler Adams and where do we put him on the field?
Well, maybe that mystery will play into the next question that we can help answer. Price the Greater, what is the difference between the USMNT in December of 2018 and the USMNT in December of 2019?
I don't think we're going to get to answer the Tyler Adams question here because he barely featured.
I kind of have an answer that relates to Tyler Adams, but I think essentially the best way I can explain this from my perspective is in 2018 we didn't know what we didn't know, and right now we know what we don't know. That's how I'm going to answer that question.
What don't we know?
I would say we don't yet know, is the system evolving like the way we want it to be evolving, or are we kind of still sticking with it? There were moments tonight when I saw the 4-4-2 defensive shape that made me sad, and I noted them, and they made me even sadder. But then, like, will Adams play a role as number 6? Will he become our eventual number 6 starter? Will Josie be the number 9? Will he be the difference maker? Who is that number 6? There's a few questions that I think we know more specifically than we did at this point last year.
Okay, so when it was just Berhalter's come in, we were just sort of like, all right, let's see what that's about. That's December 2018,
exactly.
Right? Now we've had a year of Greg Berhalter. We're sort of, we have the questions that we have about the way he sets it up and who goes where.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What else? What is the difference between December 2018 and December?
I think some of the answers we've already given factor in here about, like, you look at the players that stood out in the Nations League. Tim Ream is an example, a player that we probably didn't expect much from in December of 2018, and now we fully expect to be around for a good little bit of time. I would say Jordan Morris fits into that one, Aaron Long, Jackson Ewell as well, and maybe even Serginho Dest can be added to that list of, like, we now know he's going to be with the U.S., we now know he's ready to be a starting fullback at whatever side, maybe even a winger if need be. Like, so we have a few of those answers to questions that maybe we didn't even know were questions at that point, but they were, and we answered them, and now we have them.
All right. York asks, is the CONCACAF Nations League a waste of time?
Yes, right now, but no long term.
Okay.
And really that's me still being harsh, because this round I think is never going to be as exciting. Do you have the results?
I've just got an update for you. In the 93rd minute, Antuna has scored, and Mexico are now beating Bermuda 2-1.
I was scrolling through Twitter frantically trying to find that earlier.
This was important because it affects the final seedings for the Final Four tournaments that we go to in June. Like, with that win, I think Mexico will be top of the seedings, and it means the US will be playing Honduras in their semifinal match.
I think the only way that was going to change...
We would have been playing Mexico.
No, we would. If Mexico lost, we would have been. Otherwise, Mexico, we're going to go through with 10 points on top no matter what. Yeah, I saw Ivis tweeted that and then corrected it, that, unless Bermuda had found a way to win, it was always going to be Mexico, Costa Rica, USA, Honduras. So we know that. But I think that will be exciting, even if it is right now. This is the thing that you kind of had to get me on board for, and I think I am, that right now, because it's the first iteration and it's like, okay, so it's a Nations League, semifinal, championship, whatever, but it's the first time it's happened, so it doesn't feel as momentous as it might years from now.
And we had the weird setup where we ended up with Cuba in our group, which made it feel less like a real tournament, really.
But come a meaningful game against Honduras, hopefully a meaningful final against likely Mexico. There will be a third place game. Hopefully we're not playing in that one. But I think that will be exciting, because then those are competitive games at a time when the United States wouldn't otherwise have any, because it's going to be in the summer of 2020 when we're not competing in Copa America. So there's that. But then I think going forward, as we said, this time around, it was a weird allocation order of 4 wins and goal difference and whatever, regardless of your opponent. I'm going to assume that it's going to get streamlined and figured out more, and it's going to end up being that you will get stronger groups in Group A, but also because the entire goal of the Nations League is to help develop smaller nations so that they get more experience, more repetitions. You look at Curacao as a good example of that this year. You're going to get more teams like that, more nations like that. It will eventually become more competitive, and that's good for the U.S. and good for the Confederation as a whole.
Okay, so from a US perspective and a confederation-wide perspective, the CONCACAF Nations League is not a waste of time. It's also, I think people made this argument at the time as well. You got to remember that they're doing the UEFA Nations League, so games against European countries are a lot harder to come by all of a sudden, because their calendar is full of those games.
This
right?
is true.
So you've got to have your own Nations League just to make sure that you can have some games, basically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it really does just come down to the fact that it was Cuba who are such an eminently beatable team.
I would also point to the games against Canada as evidence that it's not a waste of time. We had some drama, right? We had the low of losing away to Canada and the medium high of redeeming ourselves in Orlando.
What I'm hearing...
That doesn't happen if it's friendlies, right? That only happens when there are points at stake.
This is true, but what I'm hearing now is a Daryl conspiracy in which the United States threw the first game against Canada to build drama for the Nations League. I see what you're doing here, Daryl.
Yeah, that's what
I see
it is.
What you're doing.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was like a wrestling narrative. Yeah.
Jesse Frankel, who from the recent youth teams has a chance to break into the USMNT in 2020 and start to push for a 2022 spot?
By the recent youth teams, are we including U23s, or are we only doing like U20s and U17s?
I'm going to say whatever you want.
It really depends on if Richie Ledesma gets some first team minutes for PSV. I think he's a candidate, but it all depends on him getting first team minutes for PSV, right? Same goes for any of those kids in the Netherlands or in Germany.
Right. I think the one that seems to be
Chris Richards the same. I reckon maybe one Bayern Munich appearance, like senior team Bayern Munich appearance, and I think he might get himself a call-up.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. I would say Giovanni Reina kind of similarly.
If he breaks through at Dortmund.
It feels like this 2020 could be sort of the parallel for when Christian Pulisic first found his way, when it was like you have the winter camp where he's maybe Rando could be training with the first team. Yeah. Maybe that goes well. Maybe he comes back. Maybe play some friendlies in the winter camp, and then he's got like, oh, now he's on the bench for this game, and he got like 5 minutes in the DFB Pokal, and you start to see a few minutes here and a few minutes there building a little bit of consistency. That would probably be enough as well for him to start getting call-ups in 2020 in maybe those March friendlies with an eye towards potentially the CONCACAF semifinals and final.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think maybe a more realistic shout, because he's already in a first-team situation, and this is a U20 and then also U23 player. Paxton Pomykal, he's already had his 5 minutes or whatever he played against Uruguay. I think there is a serious chance that he could break into the senior team in 2020.
Yeah, just depending on, I guess, injuries and if he gets a move, if he moves elsewhere, maybe he's going to be focused on that. We shall see.
Or if he's busy with the Olympics.
But is that, I mean, and there are definitely other names that you could throw out there, but a lot of them would be me sort of like, I hope this works. It could be that guy. But those are the only ones that I feel, because like even Alex Mendez, I think we would both agree you want to see him start getting first team opportunities or being involved in the Ajax first team before we see him.
Yeah, same as Ledesma.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I almost feel like it's less likely for Mendez just because the Ajax team is deeper.
Is that?
Right?
Are they? Are you sure? Yes, they definitely are.
Half Spaces Ben Harold asks, with January camp in Qatar and Germany/Holland on winter break, could Berhalter get some of the Euro guys in January camp for a bit? So some context for this question. I know you know, Taylor, this is for listeners who maybe don't know. January camp, the US often has a camp and then a friendly at the end of January, sometimes two. And then it's almost all MLS players, because those guys do not have club commitments during the month of January. Ben is asking, because Germany and Holland have a winter break, could we get some of those Euro-based players like Richie Ledesma or Alex Mendez joining the January camp?
Two-part answer to this one. First part is that with some of those guys we mentioned, like a Gio Reyna, it makes more sense for him to stay with Dortmund while they're doing the winter camp, because that maybe potentially gives him opportunities to play with the first team, get friendly minutes, and then maybe go on to play the rest of the season. But the bigger one is just that, as far as I understand it, the winter break in Germany ends before the United States is probably going to be playing those winter-friendly games. So
it's late December to mid-January. So if you wanted Josh Sargent, for example, to join the January camp, he can't, because the game will be at the end of January. He'll already be having Werder Bremen games in that time.
Which we should note, like, the question was get them in camp for a bit, which maybe implies that Ben knew that one. But I would still say, like, to call them in for a few days and then send them back to their club, I don't know if that matters as much to me as them just staying with their club and getting the kind of repetition and patterns they need. The
only argument for it is that it seems to be different to a regular January camp because it's in Qatar. So I don't think this is official yet, but US Soccer's talked about this. It's probably official at this point, right? The January camp will take place in Qatar to basically get used to the country and the setup, and just give everyone a little taste of what life in Qatar is like in advance of us, fingers crossed, making the World Cup. Is it worth it to fly Josh Sargent out there just for a few days, couple of training sessions? He can have a look around Doha.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I mean, as far as I know, a lot of German teams end up going to the Middle East to play because it's warm weather. So they'll go there for those winter camps anyway. So he may already have that experience. Also because I believe at the end of it, the United States then flies back to play their second kind of January camp game in the U.S.
So there's a game in Qatar and then a game in the US?
And then I think there's the report I saw was and then maybe some closed-door friendlies against European teams who will be in that area already. So you'll get some closed-door friendlies there. You'll get one game, but then the rest of the other game being back in the U.S.
But
I don't know.
Why are those arguments against Sargent just going out there for a few days to get a taste of life?
Because it's exactly that. Because it's just he's going out there to get a taste. I don't know if that actually helps him at all. Being in a country for 4 days.
Yeah,
does that
enough.
Really I don't feel like you can come away and be I know it all now, and now I'm totally settled.
Yeah, it's a lot of travel. It's a lot of travel. Maybe he could just read the Lonely Planet guide or something.
Yeah,
all right,
that's fine with me.
Next question
comes from Dan Vaughn. If Roldan and Lovitz are still getting starts after subpar play, why won't Greg Berhalter play the kids? Doesn't that make more sense?
So the kids are either in the U23 camp, getting ready for Olympic qualifying, or they're in the Richie Ledesma, Alex Mendes situation where they haven't yet played first team football.
Right.
I think that's basically it, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I
can't think of any other kids that could be playing instead. Dwayne Holmes is not a kid, right? He's mid-20s.
No. I mean, I guess maybe you could expand this to why not call in other names that we haven't seen in a while, maybe give Fabian Johnson a go at left back, something like that. And I think
that young whippersnapper Fabian Johnson.
That's what I'm saying is because you've already answered it. Most of the young whippersnappers are either already occupied or haven't made their first team debut or are injured, so that kind of explains it. And I also think that you look at those names, Roldan and Lovitz, and those are guys I believe who both were with Berhalter in January camp. I think Lovitz got his first call-up to the national team under Berhalter in that January camp and has stuck around since then. So I think these are kind of group guys who he thinks that, at the very least, I think they're doing things that Berhalter wants and likes, even if maybe they're not so high-profile.
I would argue the subpar play is mostly fans' observations. It may not be Greg Berhalter's observations. We found just a little snippet in... You remember the goal tonight? Is it the fourth goal? Second half, where it's crossed to the far post. Boyd backhills it and Josh Sargent finishes it.
Yep.
Right? There is a moment in that where Christian Roldan, I think he's doing a bit of a Berhalter positional play thing. He's making a run at a specific time that occupies the Cuban right back, drags him out of position, and leaves. That's what creates Tyler Boyd being open at the far post. And I think there are little things like that Christian Roldan is sort of like someone from the OA. He's doing the movements. Your sister-in-law would appreciate that joke.
Oh, and my wife. I just refuse to indulge you in that.
So he's doing the movements that it's not really appreciated by most people, just like the OA. That's why it was cancelled. But Greg Berhalter, Greg Berhalter's a big fan of the OA. He wanted a third season, and he maybe sees Roldan doing that, and gives him a big check mark for it. So I'm just saying there may be things that Roldan and Lovitz are doing that Berhalter appreciates that fans maybe quite rightly don't, because you're not watching the game in the same level of detail that Berhalter is.
I agree with you, but
about there needing to be a third season.
No, definitely not that. I agree with you. I haven't even seen the show, but I agree with you that I've seen the dancing, and I'm the weird thing. I'm just okay, there's enough stuff on Netflix. Netflix needs to calm down. I agree with you with everything you've said. I do also agree with some of the frustration about some of these selections.
Yeah.
And what I would say is that for me, again, this year has been about Berhalter sort of finding out what's working and what isn't working, figuring out who fits and doesn't fit. What will frustrate me is, as an example, again, Will Trapp may be a very nice guy, a good player for Columbus, but is he going to need to be on this team anymore? If Tyler Adams is fully fit, if Michael Bradley's fully fit, if Jackson Ewell is fully fit, that's 3 players playing number 6. Does Will Trapp need to keep getting called in? So if we keep seeing Will Trapp, Corey Baird, Lovitz called in 6 months from now or a year from now, to me, and that's if and when all those other players that we've been talking about start getting first team reps, and there's a breakout left back.
Yeah.
That is where I'm going to start to scratch my head a little bit and be I get that those guys did that job in that moment, but a few runs that it's working, do not justify then continued call-ups at the expense of other players who could be doing better.
Okay, hold all those thoughts in your head, because Dan Vaughan asked specifically about Roldan and Lovitz. Grey Hair Gaming asks, now that it gets quote-unquote more serious with World Cup qualifying, which 2020 does, do you think we see less of the Lovitz and Roldans of the world and more of a different quote-unquote group? So I think the Lovitz and Roldans of the world maybe also includes someone like Will Trapp, right? So do we essentially, if I can rephrase Grey Hair Gaming's question, do we start to see certain players phased out in 2020? Maybe Lovitz, maybe Roldan, maybe Will Trapp. Is there anyone else you could see being phased out if, for example, Ledesma or Mendes or Richards or some people start coming through at their club teams?
I would actually stick with Lovitz and Roldan for a minute to say I don't think so with either one of them for different reasons. I think for Lovitz, like really, if you're looking at a defensive left back who's maybe going to get a little bit forward but really do much more defensive work, it's Tim Ream right now, and then it's probably Daniel Lovitz. And I don't really know who else is in there as a defensive left back. So
Dest is an attacking left back.
Yeah, and also which
means Lovitz probably quite often makes the roster just in case you need that backup defensive.
And I also think right now
he's in the group.
I want like my back four is Tim Ream left back, John Brooks, Aaron Long, and then Serginho Dest at right back. If that's the way Greg Berhalter wants to go, if that's where he feels most comfortable with Dest.
Is that the starting four against Canada?
It was indeed, and I think it worked quite well. So I think Lovitz continues to get call-ups, even if it frustrates people, because there are a lack of options as that defensive fullback. Maybe with a more attacking left back, if he wants that, then you get somebody else. With Christian Roldan, until somebody else comes in and really shows that they are able to perform at a better level, because I think it will take that. I think Roldan is a Berhalter guy right now. I think Berhalter likes what Roldan brings. Maybe he likes the locker room chemistry he brings in as well. So until somebody can come in and show that they can do all those things but do them better, I think we'll keep seeing Christian Roldan as well. It frustrates me a little bit because I would like to see Dwayne Holmes given a chance, even though he's only a number 10. I do think Greg Berhalter is really, really good at that, by the way. I think that's an underrated skill set. Like I think it was Will Parchman tweet this a couple months ago. Like, how is it that Greg Berhalter has made our entire conversation about the number 6 spot about who can play long diagonals?
Yeah. Because he said that's what he wants his number 6 to do.
Right, but that's my point. Is like he is like, well, you've got to be able to hit those diagonals, and then we're all suddenly talking about which number 6 can hit the best diagonals, and it's like, well, wait, why is that what we need from a number 6? Like that's all I mean to say. Is like he does a thing of like, no, Dwayne Holmes is a number 10, and now we're like, well, he sees him as a number 10, so he's not going to ever be called in.
It's because we have to change the conversation around the information we have about what we know that he wants.
Okay.
Right? So he's forcing us into certain player profiles because once we know a bit about what his profile is.
Right. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, he's really good at establishing that, like, well, this is that guy's player profile. And then we're sort of like, okay, I guess that's how it is.
But I will say, to give credit to Berhalter, he's not just making that up as excuses. Those are things that he's sticking to, right? He hasn't played a number 6 that isn't a big diagonal hitter this whole time. It's been Bradley or Trapp or Yule. It hasn't been like a Danny Williams
Russell Canouse.
Russell Canouse or Alfredo Morales playing there.
I'm with you.
At least he's honest, even if it's annoying.
Yeah. Oh, no, I just think he's really... Oh, no, I never said he was dishonest.
No, I know.
It's just I think he's very good about structuring those types of conversations so that we don't pause and think.
I think he's not trying to structure the conversation. He's literally telling you, this is what I want from this player. And then the only conversation we then can have, right, is who goes in that spot that can do that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. We can agree to disagree to move on. But I think in those moments that like you're going to continue to see Christian Roldan because that's the player that he likes in that spot doing that sort of role, and until somebody else can break through, I think again he'll stick around.
So I think the big breakthrough of when the group changes could be post Olympics, right? And post Olympics could be post March if we fail to qualify, or post August after the tournament. I think that does open the pool up to more players, more potential players in the main senior team group. It does open it up to guys like Paxton Pomykal or Miles Robinson or someone like that, or maybe even Anthony Robinson becoming part of the senior group because there's no longer that U23 squad to push them into instead, right? So there might be a bit of a the floodgates might open a little bit once the U23 team is no longer an option to select players.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then the only other wrinkle that I think is worth noting is if the United States starts playing, say we go to the CONCACAF Nations League Championship round of Elite Four or whatever it's called.
We're already there.
Yeah.
The CONCACAF Nations League finals.
But say we go to that and suddenly it's Christian Roldan and Lovitz starting as your left back in number 8 and they get like obviously outplayed. I think only if a player is obviously not at a level that is required for the U.S. going forward. And I know a lot of people would say the Lovitz isn't, Christian Roldan isn't. They're not world-class players.
I think there's a better argument for Lovitz than Roldan.
Yeah, but I'm not. Yeah. I'm saying like I'm not disagreeing with either one of those. Like I'm not saying no, they're definitely world-class. What I'm saying is that like until
they're on the Ballon d'Or list,
yeah, right? But until they are like obviously exposed at not being at that level, and that only happens very rarely. The one that comes to mind was like Shea had that one game where he couldn't even like dribble in bounds, and I think that was kind of it for him for a very long time. It takes that level.
Jürgen was like, maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah. So there's every now and then you'll get a few of those, but that would be the only other way.
I like his paintings.
Well, speaking of well-crafted works, should we talk about today's other sponsor?
Let's do. Today's show is sponsored by Manscaped, the number one in men's below-the-belt grooming. I can tell you that Manscaped did not take care of that field in Georgetown,
not, right?
Cayman Islands. If they did, it would have been nice and smooth.
That's right. There were divots, there were nicks, there were cuts. It was all torn up.
Oh, that field looked painful.
No, and like it was too wet. With Manscaped, you've got the electric shaver. You don't need any moisture. You can just use the electric shaver, so you're not going to have this like slippery face that has no traction. You won't have that sort of issue.
Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels.
Yeah, so you won't have any like nicks or cuts or snags or I guess like grass flying up down there the way we saw in this game against Cuba.
With manscaping, accidents are finally a thing of the past. The Lawnmower 2.0. With that, they've redesigned the electric trimmer. It has proprietary skin-safe technology. This trimmer won't nick or snag anything.
That's right. And then they've got other products as well that can be beneficial, like the Crop Preserver, which is an anti-chafing deodorant and moisturizing for your downstairs parts. But again, like if you're suddenly going to find yourself in the Cayman Islands in an 80-degree evening with a lot of humidity, maybe you need some preventative measures against chafing, and maybe the deodorant factors in there too.
Well, I'm convinced, but I want 20% off.
Okay.
Luckily, I can get 20% off and free shipping if I use the code TSS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code TSS at manscaped.com. Always use the right tools for the job, Mr. Bearhalter.
Thank you very much to Manscaped for sponsoring today's episode and for, in an alternate reality, taking care of that field so it was well-groomed and ready to go. Next question comes from Beardless Jack, who simply asks, what will we remember most from 2019?
Ooh, Sergiño Dest?
I mean, I'm assuming this is about U.S. soccer, right?
Yeah. Maybe Sergiño Dest making the decision to represent the United States.
I think, honestly, it's one of those things where it depends on how it goes next year and the year after. That, like, if things crash and burn, we probably remember, like, the warning signs, whereas if things turn around and are great, then it's probably Sergiño Dest, yeah.
Okay, but December 31st, 2019, like, last day of the year, you're just looking back on, that was my year watching the U.S. men's national team. What will you remember most from 2019?
To be totally honest, like, frustration. A feeling of frustration.
From a specific moment? Or specific moments? I'm guessing Canada?
Well, first of all, I should very much clarify that we are definitely approaching this, as we have with most of these questions, from a USMNT standpoint. If we're talking about what we remember most in terms of soccer from 2019, it will be the women's team winning the World Cup.
Of course.
We should note that.
Yeah, but this is a US men's national team questions,
I think it's frustration for me. I think it will be a year of sort of like enthusiasm at times, but a lot of it was more so like, I don't quite understand why this is happening. Is that result good? Did we play well? Why did that result happen? I think, like, again, we have struggled at times to be able to say, like, oh, well, this game was really good, or there were these, like, wonderful, bright moments. And so I think there were positive moments, certainly, but there were enough negative moments and kind of frustrating moments that I think right now that's kind of where my head is.
Can I nail you down to, like, a specific moment or game that, like, will really stand out as the thing you'll remember? Because I can honestly say that when I look back at 2019, I will remember the Sergiño Dest moment, and I'll buy you time by explaining it.
No, I can tell you.
Because it especially came at a moment when a lot of people were very down on Bearhalter and on the national team, and a lot of people were just saying, there's no way, because everything always goes wrong, everything's terrible, why would you even want to play for this team? And then the fact that Dest chose to play for the US really was this, like, bright spot of optimism and positivity. So it really stood out in the moment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. I like that. I think the reason why I say frustration, if you wanted me to, like, give you a specific moment, it is probably, I believe, I say specific and then I'm asking you to help me clarify, I believe it's after the 3-0 loss to Mexico. It wasn't the loss itself. It was when the post-match press conference happened, and I think he got a couple questions about being overrun or outplayed, and Berhalter, that was the first time I feel like we saw him get prickly, and he had that response of like, oh, I see the way this is going. And it was sort of in that moment like, how did you think it was going to go? Like, you just lost 3-0 to our arch rival. Of course the questions are going to be hard. And I think that was the first moment where I truly was like, this might not be right. Something might be wrong here. And I'm not saying that was the moment I was like, he's got to be out. And I have sort of come around a little bit on Greg Berhalter, but I think that was the moment of the year when I was sort of like, wait a minute.
I think that's a great pick because I also think that game and that post-match press conference encapsulates everyone's frustrations with Greg Berhalter, and it encapsulates his determination to do what he's doing and to think long-term, right? There's definitely a clash in that moment of we, myself included, wanted the US to just be competitive against Mexico, even though it was a friendly. It's important to almost treat this game like there's points on the line because it's a rivalry match, whereas he treated it like an exercise where we go out and we try and like implement this game plan and do the movements, and that's what's important, is to just try that. Right. And I think we really saw those two things clash in that moment, and then in the press conference, and then with everyone's reaction to that game.
Yeah.
So I actually think you might have found the perfect moment.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I try. But yeah, I think that's probably it for me. And then the positive, if it ends up being positive, I think it's probably Serginho Dest is the one that like.
Oh, good. Yeah, I wish I'd thought of that.
Between that and then honestly, the other one was probably Jordan Morris. It has been the
turnaround,
the biggest turnaround. That at this point last year, if you were like, I'm going to tell you this. I think Jordan Morris is going to be a key contributor for the United States and maybe our most dangerous attacker right now. At this point, I would have laughed and mocked you hard, and then hoped,
you in the left foot.
And then I would have hoped that you didn't remember it at this point a year later.
Great question, Beardless Jack. Great question. Robert Cordova asks, will the exact same US-based MLS players that were called up in the pre-camp roster be the same players called into the January camp? So, for those who don't remember, before this round of Nations League games, before the final 23 was named, Berhalter called up 20 MLS players for a sort of pre-camp right? Before the Euro players were added, before the players in the MLS Cup final game were added. So Robert's asking, when we see the January camp, will it be the same players as those 20?
Mostly. I think what you're going to see is
Corey Baird will be there?
I think you're going to see the 5 who went with the U23s probably not included because we are thinking there'll be a U23 camp at the same time.
We're assuming there'll be a U23 camp at the same time, right?
So I think some of those players will be gone. I think like the question marks would be maybe around a player like Chase Gasper. Like, does he get called into the January camp? That seems like it would make sense, other than the fact that he seems to be more attacking left back.
I mean, I'll guarantee he won't put a foot wrong between now and January.
That is, well, you don't know. He could hurt himself. You know what's going to happen. So like he is one that maybe we'll see. I think last time Berhalter called in 12 uncapped players and 7 players who'd never been called in before.
January 2018?
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. January 2019, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how that would happen this time because looking at MLS this season, like I don't see a lot of breakout players that haven't already gotten some looks by Berhalter or some looks by U.S. Soccer. So I'm sure we'll see a few names, but yes, I think overall we're going to see a lot of the same names we've seen.
I'm going to say, assuming there is a U23 January camp, that camp is going to take all the fun out of the senior roster camp because the guys that you would have been excited about, like Pomykal or Aronson or Miles Robinson, will all go to the U23 camp, and it'll make the senior camp will be the same old, right?
Yeah.
It'll be very much the group.
Yeah, and I think like with that in mind, because
Go on, Corey Baird.
We talked about like
do that thing you do.
The 5 players who I forget now is like Georgi Mihailovic, Mark McKenzie, Jeremy Obobase. I forget there's 2 more in that like 20-player camp. If they'll be with the U23s, I don't know if Keaton Parks was in there, but he's one who
he's gone back to Benfica, I believe.
Yeah, so like if NYCFC make that official, another one similar to that would be Emerson Hyndman. If Atlanta United made that official, maybe both of them are involved in the January camp.
Yeah.
But that depends on them
especially
being made.
Hyndman because he's too old for the U23s.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Yeah, definitely. And then Mason Toye, another one who could be with the U23s. If not, then the only other 2 outliers I had would be maybe Darlington Nagbe gets one more invitation just to see if it totally was a like, no, I'm done with U.S. Soccer, or if it just happened to be 2 bad moments.
I completely forgot.
Yeah. Now back at Columbus, I believe. So we'll see. I say back at Columbus, I mean
back in Ohio.
Back in Ohio. And then the only other one, like this may be a little bit strange to you because I'm not sure if you listened to that show with Joe Lowry, but I really liked what I saw from Justin Glad from RSL in the playoffs. I thought he was really good in possession and playing some line-splitting passes.
I've got 3 words for you.
What's that?
U23.
So again, yeah, if he's in there, I'm fine with it. But if it's not a U23 camp, I wouldn't mind seeing what he can do with the senior team.
Okay, sounds good. Next question is from Mixed Discaroo's Hair.
Oh boy,
it's sentient. How do you think we do in the Nations League playoffs?
I don't mean to like wishy-washy answer this one. We haven't seen Honduras yet, so I genuinely don't know like if Honduras' group was just really bad and they like smoked everybody, or if this is a kind of rejuvenated Honduras team that we haven't really seen since like the 2010 World Cup when they were that sort of like, ooh, Palacios is destroying people.
So in case anyone missed it earlier, the Nations League finals will be it's going to be in a host country if it mirrors the way the UEFA one went. That hasn't been named yet. It's going to be in June, but we don't know the exact dates. The seeding is now set, right? So it will be in one semi-final. It will be Mexico, the 1 seed, against Costa Rica, the 4 seed. And then it will be the 2-3, which is USA versus Honduras, or the other way around. But either way, we will play Honduras.
I think it's Honduras versus USA.
So it'll be Honduras versus USA in the semi-final. I think that's a great CONCACAF test.
Yeah,
Honduras.
I do too.
I don't know a lot about the current team, but I'm going to say Honduras at least is a more traditionally challenging CONCACAF opponent than, say, Canada.
That is well
right?
said. That is well said. And also I would say, at least in the last 2 cycles, has been a team that sort of conformed to the model of win at home, draw on the road should be the goal.
Smash them at home, right? You beat them 6-0 at home and
exactly.
then struggle away.
So I would say I think I would expect us to be strong and confident against Honduras and like look for the United States to kind of continue to play the soccer that we saw them play against Canada. Hopefully not have a front 2 and a 4-4-2. I don't want to see that defensively. And then it comes down to if they get past Honduras, which I want them to and I hope they will and think they should. Then it comes down.
Yeah, we expect them to beat Honduras, right? So to answer the question, how
I think
do
I'm just being very mindful that I have not seen Honduras, so I don't want to be like, they're easy.
All right, but based on what we know and feel right now, we think we make the final, at least.
Yes,
yeah?
And then it's Mexico, and I don't have any ideas what's going to happen there.
Well, hopefully it looks more like the Gold Cup final than the friendly that followed it, but it looks like a better version of the US in the Gold Cup final.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's probably what we should hope for, is that I think as long as you're seeing like measured progress where, we couldn't even complete that pass before. We had no answers for it. Now we're completing sequences of passes, or we are having more direct balls to sort of alleviate pressure. Mexico made that swap, but it still didn't really matter because we were able to shut down that side as well. Like, I want to see the United States sort of respond to some deficiencies from the first 2 times.
I want to see direct balls that look like they're part of a plan. Like,
that
not a
nice.
direct ball like, we can't play out, so let's just go direct. But I'd like to see us go direct, and then the striker has like someone trailing them or running behind them or running parallel to them. So it's like a pattern that's been established of, okay, when we go direct, this is where everybody needs to be. You know what I'm saying?
I know
like
what you're saying.
Planned direct ball.
A planned direct ball, indeed. Old Joe, anything else on that one?
No, I'm happy with that, yeah.
Old Joe asks, what are the optimal U.S. venues for World Cup qualifying?
Ooh, I still think Columbus, right? I don't think they're going to build a new stadium.
I was just wondering that too. Is like
it won't be finished in time for September, right? Even if they do. So MAPFRE Stadium should still be in existence. I want that place redeemed. Like after we lost to Mexico to start 2018 World Cup qualifying, it's Rafa Marquez, right? Scored late. We lost to Mexico. It's not as if like the spell is broken and that Columbus Stadium's no good to us ever again, right?
No.
I think we should go to Columbus. I think we should go to Sporting KC. I love their stadium. Red Bull Arena is another one where I'd like to maybe get some turnaround because of what happened against Costa Rica last time. Remember that didn't go well.
Yeah,
I'd like for Red Bull Arena to be a venue that works for us. I know you've got one that you're keen to visit.
I liked Minnesota. Yes. I liked what we saw from Minnesota in the Gold Cup. I wouldn't mind.
Stadium, is it called now?
Yeah, was that the Gold Cup or was that a Gold Cup warm-up match?
I can't remember.
Either way, I liked it, and
I
wouldn't mind seeing more of it, and especially if we maybe are playing a warm weather opponent in like winter. Like maybe we go to Minnesota and we see how that goes for them.
We've also got
it worked for the Snowfro game, is all I'm saying.
Orlando. We've also got Orlando.
We do have Orlando.
I mean, they didn't really fill it.
They did
but
not.
We got that good result against Canada. And again, if it's some bad weather and we want to like warm our bones a little bit, could do worse than going to Orlando.
There were more people at Orlando than the Cayman Islands, right?
Many more, like 13,000. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I think those would work for me. I'm assuming Nashville are going to have a new stadium coming online.
Not just yet.
But I think we've got some time for that.
I think they're going to play at the NFL stadium for a bit, right?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I think I'm confident with all those. I'm comfortable with those selections.
All right, there we go.
There we are.
We look forward to seeing what they are, though, because it's always interesting.
It is, and we always like it when they're slightly closer to the East Coast, like the Mid-Atlantic area is always a plus.
I mean, if they could all be in Richmond, that would be ideal.
I don't know where they'd play.
Jose Lopez, City Stadium. Jose Lopez. How many games will Pulisic, McKennie, Adams, and Dest start and finish together next year?
So I have a really bummer answer to this one, which is I think it remains Adams is the issue in that equation because Pulisic like, yeah, he missed some time here and there this year, but a lot of that I think can be explained by playing a lot of games both for club and country. I'm less concerned about him. Weston McKennie has been a consistent player for the U.S. Serginho Dest thus far in his 2 games of eligibility or total eligibility. It really comes down to Tyler Adams, and that's an injury where we kind of oh, he's coming back soon. Oh, he's coming back soon. Oh, he's training. He'll be back soon.
Yeah.
Oh, he'll still be back soon. I think I heard Matt Doyle talking about it on Extra Time that even his latest Instagram photos are him very lightly training with light weights.
Yeah.
It still doesn't seem like he's close to consistent first team training, which means he's not even close to consistent first team games.
All right, so in terms of coming up with a number, there are games that these guys could be available for. Not January, because they're not eligible for it, or they're not available for it. 2 games in March, 2 games in June, because even if we lose the semi-final, there's a third-place playoff. 2 games in September.
We would assume normally there's a warm-up game before any sort of competition.
I don't know if there will be.
Okay.
Because I don't know if there's time, because we might be using all the international dates to go into
okay.
this. But here's the games that I can guarantee.
Cool,
all right, let me start again. 2 games in March, 2 games in June, 2 games in September, 2 games in October, 2 games in November. 10 games.
Yep.
There are 10 games available. This is very pedantic, I will guarantee that they will start and finish 0 games together.
Really?
Because either someone will be injured or missing, or someone will get subbed out.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
It's the start and finish that's the problem. If we maybe go to... So that's the pedantic answer is 0, right? Because of the way that works for games. But if we go maybe more with the spirit of the question, how many games will they all be on the field at the same time together? I don't know, maybe 4, depending on Adams eventually getting back.
It's a depressingly low number. I'm with you on that.
Based on our 2019 experience, it's low, right?
And we still, gosh, this is going to be a real bummer. But we don't know if this is an outlier, a really rough year for Tyler Adams. We have seen in the past.
It's been since March, right? With just 1 quick game back for the DFB Pokal. If you take that out, it's been 8 months.
I can't believe how bummed I'm about to be about this one. But we've seen it before with players that they have an injury, it takes forever to come back. When they come back, maybe they've lost a little bit, but they try to force it back, they get an injury again, or they take to I'm not saying that's where Tyler Adams will go, but that I think is the big factor in how many games they all get to play together. So yeah, maybe 5 optimistically they'll be on the field at the start together. With the substitution thing in mind, it feels like those 4, maybe Pulisic is the one who would most likely be subbed out because he tends to keep McKennie in. If you're playing a competitive game, maybe he keeps the right back in. So I don't know.
Right,
so I think maybe my hope would be that we have them for those 2 CONCACAF games in June. Maybe for some of the World Cup qualifiers, we have all 4 of them on the field at the same time. I'm going to be optimistic and say 6.
Okay.
6 starts together.
All right. Jonathan Cantu.
Oh, boy.
Jonathan Cantu asks, do you think any senior team members will play for the Olympic team if they qualify? So for those who don't know, Olympics in Tokyo in August, it's a U23 tournament, but you can name 3 overage players. You can essentially supplement your U23 team with 3 overage players. I'll give you one, which is that Brian Sciaretta suggested that our U23 goalkeepers are a little inexperienced and weak right now, and this might be a perfect tournament for someone like Zach Steffen to go and be an overage player.
It's never the overage players that you totally want, though. I remember always hoping it was going to be.
You always just pick your 3 best players and say, I hope it's that.
Exactly. So, I do think Zach Steffen is maybe one of our best players at this point, and I think that makes a lot of sense for him to go, and that would make me very excited and slightly more optimistic, to maybe significantly more optimistic. I think Zach Steffen's very good.
There's always the trouble of it running into the start of the European League season as well, right?
But then also simultaneously happens at a time when MLS will be ongoing, so then do you take an MLS player and take them away from their team for the duration of the Olympics?
It's easier to get them away.
Yeah. All right, so do you have any other ones? Because I was leaning maybe a DeAndre Yedlin to get him more reps and kind of keep him in consideration and see how he does, and maybe he can be a leader for the team going forward.
I mean, I think it sort of depends on the club situation, right? Which we cannot foresee in August.
Yeah.
So we may as well just go best case scenario. I mean, maybe Michael Bradley for experience, and because he might not make the 2022 World Cup, this could be his last tournament. So let him go and play at the 2020 Olympics.
Josie Altidore maybe wouldn't be a bad shout either.
Because he's missed so many tournaments. Actually, I think that is the best shout. But then there's a striker who's not getting the experience they would have got. I'm fine.
Josie Altidore makes a difference there. I'm going to say Josie Altidore. I'm going to say Zach Steffen. And then it's a tough one after that. Maybe Jackson Ewell. Throw Jackson Ewell in there and let him run a midfield.
Jackson Ewell's a really good shout, actually. What about senior team members that are actually under 23? Because guys that could still play are Adams, Pulisic, Dest, McKennie,
Weah.
Sargent.
We haven't talked about Weah in a long time.
Our first team is really young, by the way. Yeah, Tim Weah's a good one because he's missed so many tournaments. No, he hasn't. Sorry, he played at the U20 World Cup, right?
Yeah.
He's just missed a lot of time lately. Jackson Ewell, like you mentioned. So I know it's hard. Like I'd be happy with any of those guys.
Yeah. I mean, I think, as I said, though, it never ends up being entirely who you want. It never ends up being entirely who you don't want either. So whoever you most medium want is who will end up being those three players.
All right, okay, but I'm just getting in my head now. Not the overage players.
Tyler Boyd is the player I most medium want, so Tyler Boyd will be on that team.
Not the overage players. Think of those high-profile guys who are still under 23. If you're Christian Pulisic, do you risk your preseason with Chelsea?
Nope.
By going to the Olympics with the US?
No, you don't. And
Why
I think
not?
Because that was one of the specific reasons that Frank Lampard spelled out, is that he did not have a break transitioning from the summer to Chelsea's preseason. He came back early, but he still only had like a week off, and thus maybe wasn't up to the fitness levels. Took him a little bit longer. He kind of rushed back, and so I think with that in mind, I think Pulisic probably needs a full summer off to kind of relax, recuperate.
Fair. Okay, so you're Tyler Adams. You've missed so much soccer. Are you keen to do this just to get an international tournament and get a load more soccer under your belt? Or are you, even in August, watching that adductor and thinking, I've got to take it easy?
I mean, if he's fit, like we don't know, like it may well be that he comes back, he plays some games, and it's still not quite there.
Assuming he comes back in January and is fit and has a good second half of the season, if it gets to August, is it wise to go and play in a whole tournament? I think I'm leaning towards no, just because even after you've come back from an injury and you've been good for a few months, rest is still kind of important to make sure it doesn't happen again. I think so, yeah. Right? Weston McKennie might be the one. If he's not getting transferred and he's settled in at Schalke, and it's kind of like he can a little bit take it for granted that he's going to be part of Schalke's first team plans, give or take, I feel like he could take the chance and go and play in the Olympics in August.
And remember way back when, I think this was even in the Saracen era, that when Weston McKennie was first getting called in, but Michael Bradley, Josie Altidore weren't being called in as much, even under Berhalter early, I believe. But we saw Weston McKennie coming in, and he was playing the slap game with people and was kind of goofing around and seemed to be a sort of leader focal point for that team. I think
he's a good personality.
Yeah, I think because it was a younger team that didn't have as many true veterans. I think people kind of were happy to look to him. So I think you put him in that spot with the Olympic team, and I think maybe it works out. So I'm going to say Josie, Weston McKennie, Zach Steffen.
All right.
I would like those a lot.
Okay, I'll go with that as well.
Okay,
I'll go with that as well. Two more questions to get to.
USMNT Tweets asks, who will make a bigger impact with the senior team next year, if any? Yanez, Ledesma, Mendez, or Reina?
It all depends who breaks through into their first team, right? None of them if they don't get any first team minutes. Weirdly, my guess is that Gio Reyna gets his Dortmund debut before Yuli Yanez gets his... Well, Yuli Yanez doing really well with the Wolfsburg U19s, though, right? This is tough. I'm going to say Gio Reyna because I think he makes a surprise appearance for Dortmund, and then maybe by impact, I think plays 1 minute or 5 minutes for the senior team.
I agree. I also think for two other little reasons in there, I do genuinely think one of them is his dad helps. That not in terms of his dad's Claudio Reyna, so he gets a chance, but more so that there are relationships that I feel probably Greg Berhalter, having played with Claudio Reyna, can be hey, how's Gio doing? I've never seen him this good. I do think that probably helps a little bit. And two is just that it's at Dortmund, where there's already kind of prior of young American comes through, gets minutes, they develop him really well, and it works out well. So I feel that probably also plays into his favor, that if he's with the first team training, getting some minutes, I think that translates more directly to getting USMNT looks.
I actually want to change my answer.
Okay.
To Richie Ledesma.
Okay.
Because I think by the end of 2020, he might have made his PSV debut. And he will have played, hopefully, in the Olympics. So maybe he has a bigger platform than Gio Reyna by the end of 2020. I'm thinking late 2020.
We shall see.
Yeah.
So, but would that be too late to have a big impact?
I mean, if he comes off the bench and gets an assist at the Azteca to salvage a 1-1 draw against Mexico in World Cup qualifying, then no, that's not too late to have an impact.
Let me ask you this then. Of those four, and I think it probably goes back to Reyna, instead of bigger impact, which of them do you think makes their USMNT debut or gets their first call-up to the senior national team first?
I actually think Ledesma.
Okay.
Because I'm just thinking that maybe he has the best chance of having a big Olympics and a decent chance of making a first-team debut. And those two things might propel him into some sort of senior recognition.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gio Reyna might make a Dortmund debut, but he probably isn't going to the Olympics, right? Because he's 17, 18. He's way younger than the rest of the U23s.
That's what he wants. He wants you to have low expectations, so he surpasses them. Final question comes from Alex Calabrese. Daryl, do you want to ask this one, or do you want me to ask?
I'll ask. Right. Alex asks, what do you think about Georgi Mihailovic possibly moving to Germany? Mm-hmm. He's training with Nuremberg this week, can confirm, saw them tweet, and there's possible interest from Paderborn and Union Berlin.
Mm-hmm. I'm okay with it because I am because we were really
You're not going to veto it.
It's just because we were excited by what we saw from Georgi Mihailovic early. Mm-hmm. We thought like, okay, this could be a number 10. He's creative, he's exciting. Then there was the half spaces situation,
half-turn situation.
Excuse me. Then we started to see a few more moments of like, ooh, maybe not quite yet. Maybe he hasn't quite developed the ability.
There's a physicality thing, right? Yeah. Where he got knocked around a bit.
So I think all of those things combined, plus by all accounts not having a very good season at Chicago, not necessarily even like fully endearing himself to Chicago fans this season.
I forgot about that.
So I think it's probably a good time for him to get a move. I'm always a little nervous with teams that are like in the relegation battle or are like likely to be relegated or not even in the in the Bundesliga. I feel better about Nuremberg because I think that's one where in the second two Bundesliga there's maybe less pressure right away, whereas with Union and Paderborn, maybe they don't have as much money, so that if they're going to spend big, they're expecting him to then come in and have a big impact. And if he can't do that, then maybe he falls way down the pecking order very fast.
So maybe he has more chance of playing at Nuremberg.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. I think so.
I would also say, in terms of us being worried about his physicality, I think going to Germany and playing even in the second Bundesliga, you're kind of getting forged in fire at that point, right? There's no lack of physicality in German soccer, so it might be good for him. Mm-hmm. And it might be like a bit of a shock to begin with, but he'll probably get used to it and it will improve his game.
Yes, and no disrespect to Nuremberg, but if he does go to Union Berlin, I wouldn't mind that either because I just want to go to Union Stadium and I want to see a game there, so, it gives you more reason to go.
Do you think he's going to invite you?
Probably not, but I'll go anyway. I'll storm the gates.
All right, we ran out of questions.
We did.
How long did we go? Oh, an hour. Okay, we did just fine.
All right.
Thank you to everybody for tweeting all those questions at us. We're sorry we couldn't answer all of them, but we had a good go.
We did.
We had a good go. We'll be back on Wednesday.
You didn't want to answer the question about why does Greg Berhalter suck? That was that. We only got that one 46 times on Twitter. Yeah. Yes.
Oh.
The answer is he doesn't.
The answer is that's how he eats his lollipops. We will be back tomorrow, Wednesday.
He's a patient man.
With a roundup of all the news that we kind of haven't had a chance to talk about because we've been so very myopically US focused for the past few days. But all sorts has happened in the world of soccer, right? Mm-hmm. So we are on Wednesday going to do a big quick-fire news catch-up. If you stick with us on Wednesday, you'll be well informed about everything that's happened in the past week or so.
All right.
No
pressure.
Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy, and thanks for taking the time to watch USA Cuba with me because it was not always easy.
Yeah, let's not do it again anytime soon. Let's make all future games a bit more challenging.
I'd be fine with that.
All right, listeners, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again soon.